It drives our planning process, Ed. Every time we meet with a client, we go back to, you said these things were important to you. Here's where I am now. Here's where I'd like to be in 1 year, 3 year, 5 years down the road. Here are the most important things to me. And then we say, okay, we usually have to prioritize. There's only so much money and time. So what's really important to you? And let's focus on that. And every time we meet with that woman, we come back and we say, okay, what's changed? Is this still what's most important to you? Have we made any headway? What are the steps that you're taking to get us there? And what can we do better? So we start with this awareness. We know where they are. We know what's important to them. And then of course, we dig into, okay, how are you invested? Of course we do, because that's going to be important to where we put the money to fuel where they want to go. And we talk about their estate planning. Okay. Like you breadwinner woman, what's the plan for these kids or your spouse if something were to happen to you? So everything that affects their life, do you have enough liability coverage on your auto insurance? We really do start with a deep dive of their life, but it's driven by their intentions.
So welcome to another episode of Trends with Benefits. We are living through one of the biggest shifts in wealth and power in history. Women are now the primary breadwinner in nearly half of U.S. households and are set to control an estimated $30 trillion in assets by 2030. But the financial industry still hasn't fully caught up. So today we're doing something a little different. I'm actually really excited about this today. My friend and colleague, Jessie Molina, who is typically just the producer of our podcast. I don't want to say just, but she is the producer of our podcast. She will be stepping in front of the mic, in front of the camera, and helping me have this conversation today with our guest. And so first off, Jessie, I'd like to welcome you to the podcast.
Thanks, Ed. Doing double duty today, stepping in front like this. I'm really excited. This is something that, I think a lot of women are dealing with, juggling careers and family and money and finance. And it's really empowering, but it's also really pretty complicated.
Yeah. I mean, as a working professional yourself, a breadwinner, I think your perspective will help us have this conversation in a real world way. So thanks for that. And our guest today, Bridget Grimes, her work is doing a lot of this and helping to work with women in the professional world. She is a certified financial planner, founder of Wealth Choice, a firm dedicated to helping high-earning women and executives take control of their financial futures. She's also a founder of Equita Financial Network, which supports female financial advisors across the country. Welcome, Bridget.
Thanks for having me. Jessie, I'm so glad you're going to be part of this conversation.
Me too. This is great, though. I mean, I think this is a trend that's been coming up a lot lately, or a topic that's been coming up a lot lately, just in recent guests that have been talking about this migration of wealth to women in the coming decade. So I think it's something that we as an industry really need to get on top of or work through and help educate people as well so that they have all the knowledge and confidence to do what they need to do to support their financial future. Maybe I'll kick it off, Bridget, with just a little bit of background in your story. Can you talk a little bit about Wealth Choice? How did that come about, and how did you decide this is what you wanted to focus on?
Wealth Choice was launched about 9 years ago, a little over 9 years ago, and it was a firm. I'd been an employee at a firm before. I decided that I needed and wanted to run my own firm. And I think just before we get to this, little backstory on who I am and why I'm even doing this, because I think that will help a little bit.
Yeah.
So many years ago, I went through divorce, like lots of people do. And as the woman in the relationship, working professional, had 2 little kids, we working women tend to take on more of the family. Like that's just statistically the deal, right? And so had never paid a bill, even though I was more than capable, had chosen not to pay a bill, had chosen not to engage in our family financially because I literally had no time, right? Between work and the kids and the house and the whole thing, I had delegated away to my spouse. So when we got divorced, really interesting, found we had this debt, belonged to 2 country clubs, a beach club, living the dream. And yet we had debt that I had no idea about. So at that time, I just said, okay, So note to self, I will never take that position again. I will engage in my financial life and I will make sure that I know where the money's going. And so part was, okay, I'm going to take control of my life. But the other part was, oh my gosh, I am so busy as this woman, professional woman with kids. What will happen to me? Like, I don't even have time to think about my financial future. And when I looked around, I realized that my peers, my friends, were going through the same thing. And these were really smart women. They had great careers, but they had a lot on their plate. And I started to wonder about what would happen to women like me. What happens to us if we don't have the time, we don't have the education to take care of ourselves financially? What's the story? So it was really then where I decided, okay, you know what? I am going to get into financial planning and I'm going to start a practice that serves women who look like me. Now, I had been on Wall Street for years. I had left. I had become a pastry chef, totally unrelated. I just was stepped away from trading. It was crazy. And I realized, okay, I needed to come back into finance because I really needed to do this, right? This was important. So kind of really cool. At the same time, I read this article in the New York Times it was about a woman who was from my alma mater, Eleanor Blaney, amazing woman in our industry, who had gone to speak to the women of Mount Holyoke, where I went to college, about basic financial stuff, right? The financial literacy. And she said, here she was in a room of really smart, accomplished women. But when she spoke to them about finances, it was like deer in the headlights. And I thought, okay, so it's not just me. There is a tremendous need to educate women around financial literacy in this country. So it truly is why I started what I do. Now I, pivot a bunch of years, 15 plus years to where we are right now. I really felt that there was a tremendous need for our industry to do better of serving the needs around women and then what we call breadwinner women. And so that's why we launched Wealth Choice.
Do you find that there's a specialized need, or what is it that the industry does not do well in addressing the needs of these women?
Yeah, really good question, Ed. And I do think that our industry could do a lot better. To that point, I wrote a book a few years ago, primarily for our peers, but also for women, to take action themselves. And I really feel that we should do better. So let's talk about what breadwinner women are and what their challenges are. So these are women, the definition really is these are women who are working hard, right? And in most cases in our practice, these are women who are earning the money for their family or themselves. They may or may not have a spouse. They may or may not have kids, but the financial future of that family and that individual falls to this woman. So that's what we call breadwinner women. And the challenges these women have is they are so focused on the career and earning the money that there is no time for anything else. There's no time to think about, how do I invest in my 401k? I don't even know what to pick, right? Am I on track? Am I saving enough? Where's the money going that I earn? So we spend a lot of time with these folks on 4 pretty typical basic points. What is it you're trying to accomplish? What do you want your life to look like? Where's the money going that you earn? What's your plan around your career? If the money that these folks earn is driving everything, their ability to pay for college, their ability to retire, their quality of life, then we need a plan around their business or their career. So what's your plan? And then the last part is really like, what is your action plan? So you've figured out what's important to you. You know where your money's going. You have a plan around your business or your career. And then, okay, so what are the actions we're going to need to take to move the needle for you personally? And those are really the challenges, the biggest challenges we see for these breadwinner women to really have the life that they're looking for and meet the financial intentions that they have. So it is really unique. Now, when I think about our industry, Ed, women aren't a niche. Women are a gender, and breadwinner women, I would say, are a niche within, women. But when it comes to how we serve women, this is very different than how we serve men. And our industry is historically male driven, right? We all know this. About 80% of firms are run by men. Totally makes sense. And, for years, women really haven't been engaged. It hasn't been our culture, right? Women, I had a meeting with a client recently. It's an elderly couple and they're the parents of some clients of ours. And so we serve this elderly couple. And the woman, who's 83, has never been engaged in her finances. And her husband is, really dealing with some stuff, aging things. And she sees that she needs to become more engaged and she is just panicked. but she has never been part of these conversations. Now, I would say it is the job of the advisor to engage women in these conversations. So if you have a couple, our industry needs to be better at saying, okay, we need you to speak up. I'm going to talk to you, spouse in this conversation. I'm going to address you. I'm going to hear what you have to say. She is an important part of this conversation, and our industry hasn't done a great job of engaging the wife when there's a spouse, when there's a couple. So we could do better with that. A lot of reasons we can talk to you about why that's especially important to that practice, but really hearing what these women have to say and helping them gain confidence. This is another issue that we see with a lot of women, is just this really loud, low confidence around financial literacy. So I think there's an education opportunity, Ed.
Do you think, Bridget, that's because women traditionally haven't been exposed to these kinds of things? They just haven't had that same kind of training that men have, or they have different expectations put on them with regards to family or other things. Why do you think that is?
It's really interesting. Women tend not to engage with financial planners as frequently as men. I think it's cultural, Jesse. I just think that it's just not what we've done. And now we're in such a different place with our culture that you really need to engage.
Yeah. I remember starting my career as a financial advisor. I didn't last long, but I learned enough. And I was lucky. One of the more senior advisors always said, if a couple comes in, be sure you talk to the woman, because she's probably making the decisions behind the scenes at home, or helping the guy make the decision. So I was lucky in that regard. But to Jesse's point, the reason why they didn't speak up in the meeting or weren't more forthright was it a lack of confidence, or perhaps, like you said, more cultural or just generational? I think, do you think going forward, the next generation of women are going to be a little more upfront or a little more vocal about what they need?
So I hope so, but I think that that's, again, where we can do a better job of financial literacy. So there are so many women's initiatives I've seen among my peers, other firms who are out there really making sure they're helping to educate and engage their women clients. I think that we've done a really good job. And I mean, this is, just in the last 15 years, I've seen a big shift. So I think as we help these women gain confidence, and look, I don't think every woman out there needs to know all these details about stocks and bonds. Like, I don't think it comes down to, like, are you an expert in investing? I think it's being open to having the conversation about, okay, what do I want for my financial future? What's important to me for my quality of life? And then just engaging with, okay, what's that going to take with their advisors, right? So I think you have to be engaged to a degree, of course, right? This is your life. You get to make the choices, your money. But I think we as planners can help guide these women. And so I think it's the conversations, Ed, and I think it's basic financial literacy, but I don't think folks need to be super experts. And I think that's one of the things women wonder, right? When I had this conversation with this couple the other day, she said, Bridget, I don't know anything about stocks and bonds. Jim does it all. And I said, Maria, you don't have to know anything about stocks and bonds. Let's talk about what you want to know. Let's talk about what you need to know. And we're going to help guide you, but we're going to have these conversations. So you get the big picture, but you don't have to be in the weeds.
It's about goals, right? That's what it boils down to, right? It's about your life goals, not necessarily your investing goals, right?
Exactly. The investing doesn't drive the conversation. The investing is at the end of the conversation. It's really like, Jesse, I mean, that's what I love about where we've evolved in this industry. It's, what do you want it to look like? What are your personal goals? And then let's talk about how we're going to get there.
Yeah, investing is a tool.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a couple that you were working with. I'm just kind of curious, how do your clients find you and come to you? Is it generally the women that have brought them to the table, or is there a discussion with the couple, perhaps at home privately, of how this is going to work and they want to work with you? Or
Sure. Yeah. So at our firm, we're basically 100% referral driven. And so our existing clients will refer their friends to us or their family to us. And we're actually pretty active in social media and speaking. I'm a huge fan of trying to move the needle for women around financial literacy. Just from my own experience, Ed, I feel like we could do better. And as somebody who had to kind of navigate my own way, like, I want to make sure that more women make their way through this in a good way, right? And make really good decisions. So But our clients tend to come to us from existing clients.
That's great. That's good to have that referral business.
Yeah.
When other advisors now, so I mean, you have a practice that's built around this and really focused on women as well, but other advisors out there, beyond just engaging with them and asking in some key questions, and maybe we can talk to that a little bit too. Like, how do you better engage with the woman in the relationship, or make sure that they feel like an equal participant in planning choices? What can advisors do better in that regard?
To preface this, I think it's important that advisors understand that women don't necessarily prefer to work with women. So this is open for, any advisor out there. I think there's a couple steps folks can take to engage better. Like we said early on, it's, when you're in a meeting with a couple, to engage with with the woman in your conversation, to speak to her, to hear her. One of the challenges we have with some of these couples is that even if you do that, the woman chooses not to ask questions because either the husband is talking over her, she's deferring to him because he's controlling, this, which happens largely. She defers and she may be embarrassed to ask questions, right? In this couple format with an advisor. So one of the things I could suggest, if it would work in the situation, is, hey, do I meet with these people individually? Do I meet with them as a couple? And would you be okay if we had separate conversations? And it's, not that money, I'm not a fan of money being private in a couple. I want transparency. I think it works way better. But I think in the interest of having a richer relationship with that woman, I think sometimes you need to try to have these more one-on-one conversations with everybody being good with this and understanding, like, here's what we're trying to accomplish. So I think that that's super helpful. I do think, if you have a team, for example, and you bring in a younger woman or a woman on your team, most teams tend to be male heavy because that's our industry. But if you are really interested in engaging your female clients, I would suggest that you bring in some women to your team, and then you help this, with this conversation. Because one of the things when it comes to, women and men are totally different, right? We know this. And women tend to like empathy. And this is where I think women are great financial planners. Mm-hmm. Like, we're empathetic, we're compassionate, we're good at numbers, but there's this listening part too, right? And we all know that in the event of a life transition like death or divorce, women will leave their advisors 70% of the time. They will, because they haven't been heard. So this is an opportunity to really focus on, how do I make this woman feel like she is an equal? She is an equal, and you're speaking to her in this meeting as an equal to, the spouse that she has, not, an appendage, but this is a valuable part of this relationship, because you need to have that relationship. You need it not only to keep the client, but you need it to do good work. I mean, this is about serving these folks. You need to hear what it is that's important to that woman.
I want to ask you a little bit about the challenges that women face, especially women earners. I'm really grateful to have a husband who's my biggest cheerleader and who provides no reason for me to feel guilty about being a breadwinner in our household. But do you feel like that's something that comes into play in the conversations that you're having with couples? Is that women feel guilt about how they earn, how they spend, what they're doing with their money? How does that play in?
It varies. So I think for some of our clients, because they are all career women, I think sometimes they're really pulled in a lot of directions. What I do see when it comes to money is that they will often put themselves last. And so that's where I think we see the guilt, right? I'm working all the time. I'm taking care of everybody. And even though I maybe need to set more money aside for myself, I will instead defer and give my kid this extra money for whatever they wanted or needed. Or I will pay and take care of my aging parents who are running out of money before I worry about my own financial future. So yeah, I would, and I think that's where they feel like they need to take care of everyone else. I think sometimes that's guilt, and sometimes that's just the way women are wired. And so we have to have the conversation about, hey, there's only so much money. Let's really talk about this. Let's talk about your best options, because you can't put yourself last all the time. I mean, we had a client who years ago really insisted on giving her 3 children all of this money for college, which was great, but she couldn't afford it. And so where she is now financially for her own future is we have a lot of work to do. And we have these conversations, and we share the numbers and we can share projections. But this is something that women often do.
It's so true. That push and pull between your responsibilities with work and career and family and things like that. Sometimes
Mhm.
the money managing part of it just kind of falls to the bottom of the priority list, right?
Absolutely.
So we in our previous conversation have talked about that a lot of women feel like they've missed the boat somehow, that they've not done enough, that they're too late, that there's no catching up. So how do you advise those women who feel like they need to kind of engage financially and make a difference in their future?
So first of all, I don't think it matters how much money someone has. Financial planning is for everybody. And it's something we've tried really hard in our industry to convey to people. So this is for everybody. You don't have to have millions of dollars. You just have to have some financial need, right? Like you've got a future, then you need a financial planner. I mean, that's really the story, right? And so I think there's never a wrong time to get engaged with someone for guidance. There's never a wrong time to get engaged in your own financial future. And I have worked with women who have had life happen. They've had divorce, they've had bankruptcy, they're running companies, they're in and these are women who, one in particular who came to me in her 60s. So we're starting at a very low place. And this woman is 60, she's single and, running a small law firm. And we have work to do. And there was a lot of anxiety around this woman engaging with me. And this is probably about 15 years ago. And she was embarrassed. And that's the one thing I tell women, you don't know what anybody else has. It is not Instagram. It's not Facebook. People only show you what they want you to see. You truly don't know. So let's just back it up and let's start with what is important to you in your life. And there's no judgment. There's nothing. Like, let's start where you are and what is important to you. And then let's get started. And you can make the smallest, the most incremental steps and you get ahead, right? And so if someone is at a place where, maybe you can save $100 a month in your 401k, for example, that is so much better than zero. And the power of compounded interest is amazing, right? I mean, we all know this. It's just the greatest thing. And so, I would implore any woman at all, regardless of where you are, whatever life has thrown you, maybe you're on track and you're not even sure. Like, this is for everyone. And this is for every guy. Like, this is a really great way to just make sure that you're living the life the way you want and you're on track and you can take action.
That's a really important reminder. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Earlier, you had mentioned about financial advisors perhaps bringing on women into their practice as part of their team. Have you ever found it difficult to hire women into a financial planning practice or into the finance industry? And is there a way that we can change that?
So that is a great question. And I am really passionate about this because I think this is such a great industry for women. And why don't we see more, right? So the number of CFPs has been at 23% for I can't even tell you how long. And that's just, so we see women come and we see women leave. So we have a retention issue, we have an attraction and a retention issue in the industry. And, I was just at a conference last week and I was talking to a woman who's a professor of a financial planning program at her college. And she had brought a number of students with her. Out of the 8 students, 3 were women. Great. We talked about this. Why are we not seeing more women come into this industry? And I thought it was kind of interesting. She said in her case, the tenured professors at her university were male and older. And the industries that they send people to studying business or finance are the more traditional industries. It's analysts. It's investment banking. It's not financial planning, which is a relatively young industry. And, one of the things about financial planning we mentioned a little early on is this is an industry for smart people who are empathetic, compassionate, and really want to help people live a better life. This is a great industry for women. So we have an issue where I don't think enough women know that this is an industry option. So we need more awareness around that. I think that traditionally our industry has been inflexible. It's very hard to be in this industry and have children. I can tell you that. I did it myself as an employee. I never saw my kids. But the industry is evolving and there's a lot of flexibility in these roles at firms now where firms get it. So my practice is 100% virtual. It has always been virtual since I launched it 9 years ago. And that is an important thing. There's many firms with hybrid kind of relationships where you do in-person or virtual meetings. This allows for somebody to have life. Financial planning is not a 9 to 5 job. There is really no reason you have to be at a desk from 9 to 5. So if you are able, there isn't, right? If you're able to go out and take your kid to a sporting event, or go to a school function, right? Spend time with a parent. This industry allows for that sort of flexibility, which I think works for a lot of women, especially when we know women are still managing, families and households. So I think we can do a better job of educating just the population on what does this career look like, and helping our industry really evolve more, and how do we retain these women. Pay disparity has been a very big issue in financial planning. And in fact, if you look at the list of industries in this country, financial advisor is the worst pay disparity in this country. Not kidding. It's crazy. I looked into this a number of years ago. Yes, by far the worst pay disparity. So that's not good. So if you're going to work as hard as a man in this industry, you should get paid the same. You should get paid commensurate to the work you're doing. So our industry can do better. And, just by making some of these changes, flexibility, I really think that this is a great industry for women. So with all those challenges, if your question is, how do you bring women in? I think mentoring is great. Internships are great. Get these women exposure to what the industry is, but we have to be better about trying to create those programs. Some of our organizations like NAPFA have a terrific women's initiative. Some go out there and really partner with colleges and financial planning programs. So it's a combination, Ed. We have work to do, but I think we're slowly getting there. But a lot of this is exposure.
And I wonder if you have any examples or even tips for women that may come to you and they know they need help. They know they need to work on their financial plan, but the idea of investing, maybe because they hadn't really done it, is just overwhelming. And even learning something as simple as compound, returns.
Yeah.
Are there little things that an advisor can do to help them really start to take it in and understand the concepts?
Sure. And I think that this is where financial planning upfront in a new relationship is really valuable. So with our clients, we engage with every client, and everyone goes through the same process. And we collect everything about that individual's life, right? So we want a clear balance sheet. We do the non-exciting stuff, like the numbers stuff. We need a picture of somebody's financial life. And then we track where every dollar they've made for the last 2 months has gone, right? Very fun. It's amazing
scary.
clarity. People are like, whoa, I had no idea. So we look to see, like, where's the money coming that where's the money going that you're earning? So we have clarity around, hey, is that money going where it's most intentional to you? So we start with, really getting clarity. We have a worksheet we give every client, and we call it Passions and Pursuits. It drives our planning process, Ed. Every time we meet with a client, we go back to, you said these things were important to you. Here's where I am now. Here's where I'd like to be in 1 year, 3 year, 5 years down the road. Here are the most important things to me. And then we say, okay, we usually have to prioritize. There's only so much money and time. So what's really important to you? And let's focus on that. And every time we meet with that woman, we come back and we say, okay, what's changed? Is this still what's most important to you? Have we made any headway? What are the steps that you're taking to get us there? And what can we do better? So we start with this awareness. We know where they are. We know what's important to them. And then we dig into, okay, how are you invested? Of course we do, because that's going to be important to where we put the money to fuel where they want to go. And we talk about their estate planning. Okay, like you breadwinner woman, what's the plan for these kids or your spouse if something were to happen to you? So everything that affects their life, do you have enough liability coverage on your auto insurance? We really do start with a deep dive of their life, but it's driven by their intentions. And then we come back and we say, okay, here's where we are. So I think that this is really great for women to start and say, okay, now I understand where I am, and I understand, why you're saying what I should be doing next. But then we will bring it down into bite-sized actions, Ed. And then also we're speaking in English. We are not speaking in jargon. They don't understand. Nobody understands, right? We understand. You and I, and Jesse, we understand. People don't, I have to tell you, no exaggeration. I would say most of my clients don't know what a mutual fund is. I am not kidding, because we don't talk about mutual funds. We talk about, okay, this is what we are working. This is what's put aside to work for what we're trying to achieve for you. How are we doing? That's what they want to know. Clients don't want to know, like, what are what's my emerging market position? They don't care, right? So this is where the planning part is really valuable for women. And, you don't have to do some knockdown, drag out thing. Initially, I want them to know, like, what's behind what we're going to say. But then we come back and we have a 1-page plan and we say, okay, let's have this conversation, and we check in, right? And you become their guide in a changing landscape. That's who we are. And we help them make the best choices. But we can demystify this. This does not have to be some crazy, fancy, complicated thing. We can truly demystify this for them.
So no efficient frontier talk and standard
No.
deviation. Okay. Right.
No, I mean, we need to know that, right? We need to know that, but they don't need to know that.
Right. As you look ahead, and we touch on this briefly, just in terms of like a newer generation of people, do you think that the newer generations are helping to change the conversation about wealth and purpose, and in what ways?
I do. I have an associate financial planner on my team who's 28. She also happens to be my daughter. But I brought her on almost 2 years ago. She was in tech. I mean, this is a smart kid. She was in tech. This was not necessarily the direction she was going to go in. But we brought her on, and she is just great. And so now we have perspective in our practice from a Gen Z person, right? This is very important, especially when we talk about the wealth transfer in this country. And she has a very different way of looking at money and finance and financial literacy. And she can share with me how her peers are interacting with money in crazy ways, right? I mean, I don't know if you know about this. There's a music festival called Coachella, big festival. Everybody wants to go. It's on Instagram all over the place, right? 60% of the tickets sold this year were buy now, pay later.
Oh.
So buy now, pay later has become a darling of Gen Z and other folks, but Gen Z is just all about it. This is not good. This is people who see other people through social media doing things, buying things, experiencing things, and they want to do that too at any cost. So I've heard really mixed stats on this, where some people say, oh, Gen Z is super dialed in and focused. And I see some cases of that where they're not making crazy decisions. But I also see a number of folks who are really drawn to those experiences at any cost. So having someone on my team who is young, who gets it, she has actually been in a lot of media speaking about some of these challenges for Gen Z that we see, and actions they can take and steps we need to really help them with, so that they don't go down this crazy financial path.
I'm on the cusp of Gen X and a millennial here. And I found that the generation of, my parents' generation, I feel like have really been, we're going to scrimp and we're going to save and we're going to wait for the future, and we're going to save all this money so that when we retire, we're going to be millionaires, right? That's like we've made it. And I feel like the younger generation coming up is like this FOMO generation of like, no, we're going to experience life right now and we'll figure out later.
So, you're right, Jesse. I think there's a balance, though. I mean, obviously there has to be balance. I'm 61, and the way I look at this is I think as I've gotten older, I've really changed how I advise my clients because of my own personal experience. And where I am now, people who I really care about, who are my peers, get sick. Things happen to people. I am not an advocate of work your butt off, save every dime, and hope that the day is going to come, you walk out the door and you get to live. That's not how I advise my clients. That's not how I live my own life. But at the same time, you have to be responsible, because in this country, most of us are 100% responsible for our retirement. Most of us don't have a pension. Of all my clients, I have 2 clients with pensions. No kidding. So it's on us to prepare and save for our own future. So you have to make some smart choices. You really do. So I think you can have both, Jesse, but I think you have to make some choices. You can't have
Absolutely.
everything.
Yeah. That balance is so important.
Got to pay yourself first.
Oh, yeah, yeah, of course, of course. What about, I find a lot of folks in my generation and younger are really shifting the way that they invest towards their value. So what would be your response to folks who want to, put their money where their mouth is, put their money where their values are?
This is a hard conversation. So, for years, ESG portfolios did not perform well, and they didn't. And oftentimes because expenses were very high, right? So internal expenses for these investments were high, and it makes sense. And I know the industry has evolved from there, but at our firm, we really say, look, what is the purpose of this investment? Is this purpose to generate a good return, to give you the quality of life, or to fund a specific thing? Is that what the purpose of this money is? And in that case, I say, use your life to live your values, right? Make your decisions in your life that are aligned with those values. But if the purpose of this investment is to generate a return, we encourage our clients to segregate that. That's not everybody's, it is so complicated. Jesse, it is very hard to filter out an investment portfolio for one person's particular passion. It's very, this. I mean,
Yeah,
there are a number of folks who try to do this. So I really think it comes down to what is the purpose of the money and how can you in your life live within your values? I think there's a way to do both, but there's no perfect solution.
Yeah, that was always my problem with like ESG funds, and everybody has a different methodology for what was ESG or whatever they were targeting. And sometimes they'd include oil, sometimes they wouldn't. Or to me, it was just an overlay. It was a very personal overlay that people could make if they wanted to. But yeah, and in some other cases, maybe there are more direct types of investments if they wanted to be green or something. And yeah, that's interesting. I think there probably will still be momentum towards more sustainable types of companies and investing long term, but we'll see. But yeah, I agree with your point. Is try to figure out what it is you're trying to use this money for. If you really want to support another approach or something, and maybe that's something on the side. Or yeah, it's a tough
It is
dilemma.
a tough one. It is.
Have you found any technologies that you think that have really helped or could help women do or get more involved, educate themselves, help with their financial planning?
I think AI is a great topic. And I would say, I think our industry, like every other industry, is really grappling with what are the implications of AI on our industry. And so the first thing I wanted to say to this question is, you can go to ChatGPT and you can ask questions and you're going to get an answer. And that goes for financial planning as well. And I think I think there's a value to AI in that capacity, but I don't think that it replaces the personal conversations that you're going to have with an individual, with a person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's super important. And this is a conversation our industry is having all day long, right? I mean, are we going to be relevant? Just went with my doctor the other day and he said, Bridget, I'm going to be replaced by AI. And I said, I don't think so. I don't think so. This is a great doctor. He's, we spend a lot of time together. He asks probing questions. I can go to ChatGPT and I can put in, here's all the things wrong with me, and it will give me a diagnosis. Is it accurate? No. Is it missing a lot of things? Yes. And so I think that AI does play a part. But it's not, I don't think any of us should be diagnosing what's wrong with us unless we're a doctor. I just don't. Because you can come up with all sorts of crazy things. So I think AI plays a great part. I think it can help, but I think it's the beginning of a conversation. And I don't think it replaces the important relationship that you have with someone who's guiding you, who's going to ask those questions, who hears you. We just aren't at that place with AI. Now, I think AI does have a purpose. And there are some great apps, for example, not necessarily AI, but if you talk about apps that can help folks, we're a huge fan at our firm of tracking spending no matter how much money you make. My biggest client knows how much money they spend, right? And we're talking about a lot of money. So a lot of money that they earn, and we want to know what's their cost of living. So there are great apps that people use that we encourage our clients to use to check in, see how you're doing, keeps you on track. You can easily automate savings in certain things that are important to you. And there are ways to make, where this can facilitate that. So I think that there's opportunity. When it comes to financial literacy, I still am a big fan of trying to engage with individuals, with people, rather than AI for financial literacy. I really am. I think there's a lot of great opportunity to do that. But I think that AI is a good starting point, but I don't know, Ed. I don't feel that it just starts the conversation.
Yeah. If anything, it helps them maybe get a little bit more educated and perhaps ask better questions in a meeting with an advisor.
I think so. I think so. And I'll pose questions to it myself. It's very interesting. I'll pose questions to it. I just was interviewed for an article that's coming out in the paper soon. And I had thought through this scenario and then I put it in chat and I wanted to see what they said. And it was interesting. It came back with some things, but I was like, that is totally not. There are some things that we absolutely have to address that are not picked up in this huge human component. So, we'll see. Maybe we'll see how it evolves.
Yeah. And then just curious, I'm just kind of jumping around as I think about the goals that you put together for clients. Do you look at their portfolio as a whole kind of as a total portfolio, or do you put things in goal buckets? It's like, here's your retirement bucket, here's your vacation bucket, and optimize within those buckets.
So if there's one unified goal for our clients, right? So let's say she has a goal for retirement. All of those retirement specific accounts should have the same investment strategy as far as we're concerned. So sometimes a trust will be included with an IRA or, their 401k. When we look at all of those accounts as a whole, we feel that they should have one unified strategy. So across those accounts, we will use the same investment philosophy, same investments, and it will match, right? And you know why that's important? Because if we're invested in a certain way, we actually have these expectations of how those accounts are going to perform. And are we going to be on track with what they're trying to accomplish? So if a client, for example, has the goal of education for a child, or let's say they want to save money for another home, that money will be invested slightly differently because we have a different, what we call a time horizon when we need the money, and it's taxed a little differently. And when we can access it, it's different, right? So we can put money in a non-retirement account and we can take it out before you're 59 and a half, and we can use it for a different goal. So in that case, that money will be differently invested than, let's say, money we need in 20 years for retirement. But overall, at our firm, we have the same investment philosophy, but how we deploy that, if it's in a pre-tax account like an IRA, or if it's in a post-tax account, then we will tweak the investments we use to be tax preference. But our investment philosophy overall is the same, but how we, in a particular account, depending on the goal, exactly how that money is invested will be slightly different.
Yeah. And maybe that helps them, makes more sense to the client too, to understand what each component is for.
Sure. And we'll have that conversation, right? Because without having to get in the nitty gritty, we'll say, okay, so over here, this is your house fund, and here's why it looks different from your retirement fund.
Excellent.
So one way we like to close out the show is to ask, what's one long-term trend you see playing out over the next year or several years? So we want to give you the opportunity to talk about something that's really on your mind that you've been thinking about, that you feel like either no one's, looking at right now, or that you just feel really, bullish on. So please, what do you think?
Okay, so I don't know if no one's looking at this, but I really do think that a top trend is this wealth transfer that Ed talked about in the beginning. We are talking about a phenomenal amount of money that is moving into the hands of women in this country. And we started with the challenges of financial literacy and women and a lack of confidence. And this is an issue. So where does the money come from? So a lot of male baby boomers will be transitioning this money to their spouses or to, younger generations. And a lot of this, tremendous amount is falling to women. And so I really see this as a massive trend for everyone. This is important for the women who will have this money, who don't know what to do with it or how best to deploy it or where to even get started. And this is an opportunity for the advisors in our industry to be prepared to help these women best, understanding that there's nuances to, challenges that women have that men don't have, to have these conversations from folks, even from a very young age. A lot of this money is going to go into young hands. So how do we help guide this so that women know, are educated, are empowered to do the right thing with this?
As I put on my product developer hat, do you think there's another beneficiary of that wealth transfer, like certain companies, types of companies? Are there investment opportunities who want to capitalize on that?
there's an opportunity for women to speak with their money, right? And if that's to put some of this money in value places that echo their values, I think that that's great. I had a great call with a woman this week who has a fund of small companies that are women and minority led. These are private companies, and they're not just in the US. These are in, South America. They're all over the country, all over the world. And what she was saying is that many of their supporters of these small funds are women who they've got their investment portfolio. They've got that all cooking. It's going, it's funding their lives, but they have an opportunity instead of making a charitable donation, for example, they're actually they're taking that money and they're putting it in this fund, which continues to help these small companies. So, this is a way for them. And I love that, right? Instead of like, hey, here's my $2,500 donation and I write it off for my taxes. This is like me making an investment in something that aligns with my values. So I do think, Ed, that there will be an opportunity for folks for women who get this money to say, okay, I have an opportunity to make a difference. And perhaps this is a way I do this, right? Perhaps I align my values outside of the portfolio that I need for my life. Maybe there will be an opportunity to make that kind of change.
Excellent.
Before we move on to our speed round, I want to just follow up on something that you mentioned as far as the generational shift. And that, earlier we talked about women who feel like they're playing catch up and they haven't been involved and they're not sure what to do and they've got these responsibilities. I'd love for you to just, before we close out, give us sort of your elevator pitch for if you walked into the elevator with a woman right now who said, oh, geez, I haven't been doing enough, but I know I should be, and I don't know what to do. It all is so overwhelming. What do you tell her? What is that woman? What should she do? What would you tell that woman to do?
So that overwhelm is really common because I would say that's how most people come to us.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing because it's so common. And it's really rare a woman comes to me and she's like, I got it all figured out, because I'm like, I don't know why you would need us. But so I would just say, okay, you take a breath and let's start with what is most important to you. Absolutely. What is most important to you? What are your intentions? And that's where like a goals worksheet is super helpful. It's not dry. It's like perfect world. What would I love it to look like? Right? Like where, it's what is the point of all this? Right? What do you want it to be for you? And once you start there and you have some clarity about what's really important to you, then you can say, okay, well, where am I? Where am I? And incremental steps. That is the biggest ticket here. Our clients are crazy busy. I think most people are really busy. So to say, okay, we're going to incrementally make some change and chip away at getting to what's important to us. Did you ever read James Clear's book, Atomic Habits?
No, I haven't.
This is probably one of the most amazing books I've ever read because it takes your overwhelm in whatever and anything you're trying to accomplish, it parses it out. How do you incrementally get to what's important to you and really reach that goal? And so that is really how we help folks. And I would just say, you're in overwhelm. I get it. Start with what's important to you and then spend some time spending, where am I? Like, what's my situation? And then you can incrementally take some action.
What was that book?
It's called Atomic Habits by
Atomic
James
Habits. Oh,
Clear.
God, yeah.
It is so good, you guys.
I'll have to look into that. So you're telling me I'm going to have to say the 3 hardest words in the English language. I need help, right?
Yes. Jesse, if you find somebody who gets you, like, help is okay. And help is not ridiculously expensive. I think sometimes people are like, oh God, financial planning, I can't afford that. You don't know that. There's a million different ways to do this. Yeah. There are hourly, there's, retainer. There are many different ways to get the help that people need.
Excellent.
If you're like me, and Ed knows this, you do that by having people seeking out people for your podcast that help you personally with your own personal financial goals. That's what I try to do. I try to find guests for the podcast
do that all the time.
Can, I could take really dubious notes in our prep meetings and such. That's really helpful to me.
Hey, I love that. I think it's awesome.
One of the benefits of the podcast.
A little behind the scenes for you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure you meet great people. You must have some fun conversations.
It's been fun.
Yeah, sure do.
Awesome. All right. So we have a few minutes left. Ready for our speed round, trend or fad?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. There's no wrong answer, so no worries. You can pass too if you don't know it. This one, I think I know, but we'll ask it anyway. So women as a primary breadwinners, trend or fad?
Trend. I'm hoping. No, it's tough.
Yeah. What about smart everything, wearables and home tech, everything speaking to each other?
Oh, you know what? I'm old. I don't even use that stuff. I don't know. I'd say it's a trend. I'm bust behind the times. I'm a Luddite.
It is a trend, and then I've heard people pulling back from that because it's almost too much. I went through and replaced all my light switches with smart switches, and I'm like, sometimes I just want to get up and hit it manually.
Yeah.
Instead of bringing up the phone and swiping to the app, and then like, anyway.
I gotta tell you though, when my washer and dryer tell me that it's time to switch my laundry over on my watch, that's a feature
That's
I
been
can
the
get
most
behind.
beneficial app that we've had. I thought that was a crazy idea, but then it's
Okay.
like, it's very helpful, right?
So that's a good one. All right.
Yeah. All right. Book clubs as business networks, trend or fad?
Okay. So interesting. We launched our book club at my practice this year, but we didn't do it for business development. We did it because my client advisory board asked for it. And I said, okay, so I have one more thing on my plate. Now I have to read another book, but it has been really fun. So I would say it's probably a fad. I don't know how long it's going to go. I love it, but I don't know.
I don't know. You pair that with some wine tasting and it could last quite a while.
Good. I think community, Ed, if the question is like community, like bring community together of your clients, a trend or fad, I think that's absolutely a trend. But how you do it, right? Is it book club forever? I don't know, but I agree with you. Bringing people together. Yes.
Gotcha.
I feel like our next one that we had prepped, we already talked about, it was AI and personal finance, trend or fad, but we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, my portfolio wants me to say that it's a trend because we all have a lot of investments in this. But, I think, like you said, Ed, I think that there's going to be some great developments and then I think we're going to refine it. I want to think that AI is not going to replace all sorts of people and industries. I don't know. I don't know. Can I be like, I don't know on that one?
Yes, yeah,
sure
absolutely.
can.
Like I said, no wrong answer. And then perhaps the last one, I mean, since you have a daughter and part of the younger, what generation is she? She generation?
Gen Z.
Gen Z?
Mm-hmm.
So this one is finfluencers, trend or fad?
So I'm going to hope that that's a fad because, and I'll tell you why. We are trying the CFP board. I'm an ambassador, and we are trying to combat bad information on social media because it is dangerous. So there are people with millions of followers who are not in any capacity, no right to be making financial decisions for people, and they're doing it, and people take their action. So I want to hope that if we continue with finfluencers, there's some sort of guidance for these people, something in check, regulation. I don't know. I don't even like regulation, but there has to be some way to get these people in line. I think the more we educate people, Ed, the less that they will be inclined to believe some crazy person who's talking about how she can justify buying really expensive shoes.
That's
right?
a great point. Yeah.
It's a great point, not just financial of influencers. It's a great point for anything you hear on social media, just to take it all in with a grain of salt and remember that this might not be true.
This might not be
It's
true.
important.
Well, this is great. Bridget, thank you so much for your time and perspectives.
Oh, you're so welcome. This was such a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
What's the best way for people to learn more about you and your practice?
Sure. So you can go to our website, which is wealthchoice.com. Take a look, see who we serve, and we love having conversations. So you can reach out to us through the website, and we're happy to have a chat. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, Bridget Venus Grimes, LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Jesse, thank you for joining.
Happy to.
Awesome. Great. That ends our episode. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Trends with Benefits.